Welcome to the CEC Report. It's the 22nd of July. I'm Robert Barwick and I'm joined today by CEC researcher Glen Isherwood. Welcome, Glen.
Thanks, Robbie.
Glen joins me on a pretty historical occasion, and this is a momentous CEC report because we have some very good news. First, 28 pages revealed. Prince Charles's Saudi chums behind 9/11. And second, USA's major political parties both want Glass-Steagall, so why not Australia? So, first, the big news of the day, 28 pages revealed. Prince Charles's Saudi chums behind 9/11. Now, Glen, just the way our schedule worked in this last week, we had to record last week's show a day before we normally would, on last Thursday.
That's and since right. I edited it.
You edited it, that's right. Since we recorded that, a lot has happened. The first was the terrible attack in Nice, which was in France, which was very shocking. The second, though, was the 28 pages of the US Joint Congressional Inquiry into 9/11 that have been suppressed for 14 years, or nearly 14 years, were finally released. And then, within less than 24 hours after that, you had the coup in Turkey. And all those events are related. That's the bottom line. We're going to talk about the good news part because that's going to get us to solving the rest of it. The 28 pages. And this was a hell of a suppression. These pages were handed in, officially submitted to the US government as part of the overall report in 2002, December 2002. I'm holding them up here. You can find copies of them on the web. We'll put the link up there on the website. If you don't have that facility, certainly call us on our toll-free number, get a copy. Why should you get a copy? Because you do need to know what they say, and to do that, you have to read them for yourself.
In fact, Robbie, what we'll do, on the CEC website, we'll create a special page, www.cecos.com.au/28 pages.
Good.
And we'll make it easily available from there for everyone to download and read.
Yes. There's only 28 pages. And why I'm saying read them for yourself, this will change your perspective on the world. Now, you might already be, if you're a regular viewer, halfway there with us, but don't be like a little baby bird that only ever consumes regurgitated material, right? This is historic. You get to read what the US government knew in December 2002. This is official information. There's a reason it was suppressed for 14 years. You may have confidence that we're not lying to you, but don't use that as a fallback option. Read them for yourself, and like Glen said, we'll make them available. I want to quote a US congressman, what he said after he read him. His name's Thomas Massie. Now, he read him a little while ago because as a congressman, he was allowed to, and before they released him, the US congressman could go into a room without their mobile phone and without a notebook. They couldn't take notes, and they were allowed to read these pages. This Congressman Thomas Massie, he said, after he read him, he said, "This is sort of shocking when you read it. I had to stop every couple of pages and just sort of absorb and try to rearrange my understanding of history for the past 13 years and the years leading up to that. It challenges you to rethink everything." So that's pretty powerful. That's the power of what we're talking about. What's at stake, Glen, in these 28 pages is not our knowledge. What is at stake is stopping terrorism. There's a real fraud been perpetrated on the whole world since 9/11. And that fraud is bombarding us on a daily basis. And certainly if you're on Facebook and whatever, it's bombarding you. The fraud is there's this general label, Islam, behind terrorism. Now, people believe it because every terrorist event we hear about is perpetrated by a Muslim, right? But to label it Islam in general, instead of what it is in particular, is a fraud. These pages reveal what it is in particular.
I'll just point out, Robbie, that fraud of the label of terrorism as Islamic actually dates back to the operations run in the 80s by the West through the CIA and the Saudis in sponsoring the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to fight the Soviet Union, sponsoring the radical Islamic circles to run operations like this.
Yeah, you could, even the analogy of Pandora's box is wrong in the sense that that implies it was always there and we just lifted the lid off it. No, we took people that were crazy and we said we're going to use them, right? And we're going to put them to work and we're going to fund them and we're going to give them lots of weapons. And that has what morphed into this terrorist threat.
Yeah.
That there was an element of that was known, but okay, even if that was known before 9/11, the fact that 9/11 happened, Glenn, should have been the reality check that, okay, what we did was wrong. This has got out of control. This has now killed 3,000 people, right? This is the worst terrorist attack in history. This gets shut down now. But instead of doing that, they suppressed these pages that proved the links to that, and it's just flourished as a consequence. So the suppression of these pages, while the people who did the suppression went on things like the Iraq War, was a betrayal to the whole world, right? We can now, with this knowledge, this official knowledge, and I keep emphasising that because some of what we're about to say, if you're regular viewers, you've heard before. Because we're good investigators, we've been digging this up, right? And that's why Glenn's here, because he's dug up as much as anybody. You've heard it before, but when the official documents confirm it, right? That's what people have to absorb. You mean the powers that be did know this? We were lied to that blatantly, right? And that's why you've got to read it. So what we're going to do for our program today, Glenn, let's go through the pages, but we want to set the scene first. And to do that, we want to introduce you to someone, or if you've already know him, we're going to remind you who he is. Meet this guy. Put him on the screen. This is Prince Bandar bin Sultan. And as you can see with the pictures that we're going to have of him, he hangs out with very famous people. And hangs out's the wrong word. He's really good friends with these people. And no one more so than Prince Charles himself. So Glenn, let's just go through, describe these pictures for us and what Bandar's links are in each one.
Well, Prince Bandar bin Sultan, his father was the defence minister for Saudi Arabia, very closely connected to the King Faisal branch of the Saudi royal family. Prince Bandar has been the ambassador to the United States, to Britain, and a very senior intelligence official for the Saudi government going back decades.
So the first picture here is him with Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
That's 1985.
So the context, Bandar was involved in 1985 in creating the Al Yamama weapons for oil deals. This was in exchange for Saudi receiving warplanes, they would create a very unusual barter arrangement to send oil to Britain to sell on the spot market, and that deal, Al Yamama, was very controversial. But we'll get into that in a minute.
And he did the deal with Margaret Thatcher in those days.
Yeah, and they were close. I mean, he had open access to 10 Downing Street. He could walk through the front door, no one would stop him. He was a regular face in those places. The second photo has Bandar having a cosy chat with George W. Bush.
Now, these two were really close, weren't they?
Yeah, to the point that Bandar bin Sultan was nicknamed Bandar Bush because of their close friendship.
I've seen him described as a de facto son of the Bush family.
Yeah, and that tells you a lot. And then the hot relationship in the sense of political controversy is the one with Prince Charles. Now, when Charles got married to Camilla back in 2005, he only invited a small amount of foreign royals to that, but one of those was Prince Bandar and another prince of Saudi Arabia, Prince Turki, his brother-in-law, Prince Turki bin Faisal. And he's also very senior in the intelligence apparatus of Saudi Arabia and is very closely tied into the British intelligence services as well.
And Prince, just on Prince Charles a bit more, Prince Charles is the patron of an outfit at Oxford that promotes Islamic studies, the Oxford Centre for Islamic Studies, and both the two gentlemen you've just mentioned who were at his wedding, Turki and Bandar, are big players in that centre. Yeah,
and so, I mean, he is tied in so intimately to the defence intelligence structures of the United States and Britain that for his name to appear in the 28 pages, this document that's been suppressed for 14 years, that our organisation, victims' families of 9/11, former and current congressmen have campaigned relentlessly to have released, for his name to appear just in that document is alarming enough. But where his name appears, there were two of the hijackers in 9/11. Their names were Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Maida. They were in San Francisco.
San Diego.
San Diego. And they received funding from what are said to be two Saudi intelligence agents who were the money was given to them. Their names were
Al-Bayoumi
and Osama Baznan. And their money was taken from Prince Bandar bin Sultan's accounts, Riggs Bank in Washington, D.C., sent to these individuals and then given to these hijackers and given in support of to get them set up in the United States.
So what we're going to show the viewers those excerpts from the pages that show exactly what you just said, Glenn. And so we'll take a break before we do it. People should be thinking about that during the break. This guy, we've just showed you who he is the man named in the 28 pages. We'll deal with that after the break. Welcome back to the CEC Report, where we're discussing 28 pages revealed Prince Charles's Saudi chums behind 9/11. And if I have to remind people, Glenn, Prince Charles is our future king, the future king of Australia. Why? For no good reason, but that's what he is. All right, so let's now look at the pages themselves. Just before I do, they were released on the 15th of July, so last Friday. That happened to be the Friday before the US Congress rose for a 6-week recess.
How convenient.
And that's part of, Obama obviously wanted to keep him as buried as he possibly could, though the pressure had become too much for him to actually keep him suppressed. However, the White House put out a statement coinciding with the release that said they contain nothing new. In other words, you, the viewer, shouldn't bother reading them. Well, we're going to make them available and pretty much demand that you do. But even some mainstream media have instantly contradicted that. The Guardian newspaper on the 16th of July by Philip Shannon, headlined "Release of 9/11 Report Could Strain US Relationship with Saudi Arabia." Shannon said, quote, "The so-called 28 pages suggest a much larger web of connections between Al-Qaeda and the Saudi royal family than had previously been known," end quote. And then on the 15th of July, Paul Sperry wrote in the New York Post, quote, "Now we know why the missing 28 pages on 9/11 were kept under lock and key for 15 years. They show the hijackers got help across from America from Saudi diplomats and spies in the run-up to the attacks. Because of the cover-up, a Saudi terror support network may still be in place inside the United States," end quote. So that's very significant. Let's read I'm going to read some little excerpts from the opening pages of the 28 pages. The first few pages are a summary, and then the rest of the pages elaborate on that summary. And I'm just going to read the references to Bandar, who we were talking about before the break. So the opening sentence of the 28 pages is, finding, while in the United States, some of the September 11 hijackers were in contact with and received support or assistance from individuals who may be connected to the Saudi government. Now, the writers of that report said may because they're not trying to make a political point or something here, but then they go and list all the intelligence that backs up that statement may, and that intelligence is so overwhelming, the word may is just them being super cautious, right? They prove it.
And this commission was, this joint congressional inquiry was using intelligence that the FBI and CIA had at the time.
That's right. The FBI and CIA handed over what they had. So in the next quote is in the segment, the first reference of this Omar al-Bayoumi, the Saudi intelligence agent that you referenced before. Here's the quote: "FBI files suggest that al-Bayoumi provided substantial assistance to hijackers Khalid al-Maida and Nawaf al-Hazmi after they arrived in San Diego in February 2000. And then if you go to the next quote about Omar Baznan, Baznan may have been in contact with al-Maida and al-Hazmi, one of those mays again, but it's pretty much proven. During their time in San Diego, Baznan was a close associate of al-Bayoumi and Omar Barker Bashet, another one of the hijackers' close associates. He also lived across the street from the hijackers and made a comment to an FBI asset that he did more than al-Bayoumi did for the hijackers. So they've proved al-Bayoumi assisted the hijackers. They didn't have as strong evidence on this, except he's boasting, I did more than he did. And this is the key bit about Basnan. He and his wife received financial support from the Saudi ambassador to the United States and his wife. The report states that during that trip, a trip that Basnan took, a member of the Saudi royal family provided Basnan with a significant amount of cash. FBI information indicates that Basnan is an extremist and supporter of Osama bin Laden and has been connected to the Eritrean Islamic Jihad and the Blind Sheikh. And I'll just show people for the camera. You can see, even though it's been released, there's still lots of redactions in this report. And then jumping over to this part, this is the last reference that I want to quote. They're talking about a terrorist captured in Afghanistan named Abu Zubaydah. According to FBI documents, several of the phone numbers found in the phone book of Abu Zubaydah, a senior al-Qaeda operative captured in Pakistan in 2002, could be linked, at least indirectly, to telephone numbers in the United States. One of those US numbers is subscribed to by Aspercol Corporation, which is located in Aspen, Colorado, and manages the affairs of the Colorado residence of the Saudi ambassador Bandar. The FBI noted that Aspercol has an unlisted telephone number. According to an FBI document, the telephone number of a bodyguard at the Saudi embassy, Bandar was the Saudi ambassador, was also found in Abu Zubaydah's possessions. So these are lots, and then the rest of the report elaborates on that, and then the other connections between the people around 9/11 and the Saudi government. So this guy, who we featured before the break, Prince Bandar, close de facto brother of George W. Bush, very close friend intimate friend of Prince Charles, could walk in and out of Downing Street. This is the man named in the 28 pages as putting up funds for the 9/11 terrorists. Now, Glenn, this cover-up that's gone on for 14 years has a parallel in the United Kingdom, which is started in 2006 when Tony Blair shut down the Serious Fraud Office investigation into the Al Yamama deal, which you described before that. That investigation, though, had revealed something about the kickbacks that Bandar was being paid. Who was paying those kickbacks to him? And what account were they paying them into?
And this is crucial, Robbie, because this is the link between the Al Yamama scandal in Great Britain to the 9/11 terrorist attacks in the United States and the 28 pages. And that's important to note. The Al Yamama scandal reveals that the same bank that Bandar had taken funds from to pass on to possible Saudi agents in San Diego who supported the terrorists, that bank, Riggs Bank, was the same account that money from Britain was used, from the Al Yamama deal was used. These bribes to Bandar, kickbacks, were put in that same bank account. So that's crucial. Now, when the British authorities, the Serious Fraud Office, wanted to investigate the Al Yamama deal and find out what, this shady money behind it, Tony Blair shut it down. On orders from MI6 agents, on orders from very senior levels of the British establishment, and also with support from, British royals. Prince Andrew denounced the investigation. And this is because the connections that Bandar had to the senior levels of royals in the UK was just too hot. And they didn't want any of that becoming public. So they shut it down.
Now we'll do we're putting out a press release on this today, Glenn, quite detailed. So people can also find that on our website.
Let me just add, Robbie, that until this investigation is reopened into the Al Yamama, the logistical support for terrorist activity still exists in the banking system, in the Saudi establishment, and it has to be shut down, and that is the actions that we have to take now.
Right, let's take a break and we'll talk about more after the break. Welcome back to the CEC Report. Finally, USA's major political parties both want Glass-Steagall. Why not Australia? But Glenn, before we do, let's just wrap up the discussion we're having before the break and clarify for the viewer the difference between this term Islamic terrorism, which is just this generic coverall that doesn't explain anything, and what the Saudi royal family is known to actually promote.
The Saudi royal family promote a sect of Islamic thought or a school of thinking called Wahhabism. It is a brutal, intolerant form of Islam that wipes out any alternative type of Islamic thought. Christianity, Judaism, any other form of religion is not acceptable.
Shia Muslims as well. In fact, they're their favourite
In
target.
fact, this has its roots in the 1700s. When the British Empire wanted to dominate the Middle East, they chose the Saud family because of its brutality to take control of the peninsula and use Wahhabism as a control on the population.
And so ISIS and Al-Qaeda, this is what they subscribe to.
Yeah, and they've taken this radical form of Islamic thinking and promoted it for, effectively to use as an army in that part of the world for geopolitical
And would you
reasons.
say the ideology would have no power really if it wasn't for this huge logistical support given to it by the Saudi royals?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and I think they've funded it to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars since the late 70s. Anyway, let's leave that there, Glenn. We don't want to make this an afterthought because this is also really, really good news, but there's not that much to say about it. We put out a press release on it yesterday. We've been fighting, as regular viewers know, for a long time for Glass-Steagall as a solution to the financial crisis and to protect us from the next one. Break up the banks, split them up, split off commercial banks that held our deposits and make sure they don't do anything risky, and the ones that do, the investment banks that want to speculate and gamble in derivatives, etc., if they do, they're on their own. No more too big to fail banks. So after a lot of slogging, the good news of this week is that as of this week, both major political parties in the United States, first the Democrats and then the Republican Party, have put Glass-Steagall onto their presidential campaign platforms. Even though Hillary Clinton campaigned against it during the primaries and Bernie Sanders campaigned for it, he did so well and as a socialist nearly beat her. She did not oppose it going onto the platform. Doesn't mean she's going to overtly campaign for it, but it's officially her policy now. She has to wear it. And good old Donald, as wild as Donald Trump is, and we certainly do not endorse most things Donald Trump says, but there's a unique thing about Glass-Steagall. It's quite unifying. A lot of people from the spectrum of politics support Glass-Steagall for different reasons, but they all agree that this is a principle that is required back as the core of the financial system, partly because no one can argue that it didn't work. Right?
It's a bit like you try and put an inflated ball under the water. It's going to rise to the surface.
That's right. No, that's right. They tried to do it. They tried to suppress it.
It won't.
And there's a quote here that Wall Street's terrified of this. What's the fact that both major parties have it? Some publications have reported, quote, there is an unappreciated risk that Glass-Steagall might be reimposed in 2017 or 2018, regardless of who wins the presidential election, which would, quote, pose an existential challenge to too big to fail banks. So that's a victory. We need it here in Australia. If both major parties can do it there, why are both major parties blocking it here?
Absolutely.
That's it for the CEC report. Go to our website, call in and get a free copy of the Australian Alert Service, which covers the 28 pages in a big feature this week. And thanks for tuning in.
You've been watching the CEC Report, the weekly TV show of the Citizens Electoral Council of Australia. What can people do to find out more, Robert?
Well, they can get on our website, www.cecaust.com.au, or they can call our toll-free number for Lisa to order a copy of this, the Australian Alert Service, which is our weekly publication where we write up all the material we use. That number is 1-800-636-432.